What's up, outliers? Quick market recap. We got two things on the agenda. First, we're going to talk about, well, the market. Then we're going to talk about NVIDIA and GameStop, because GameStop just so close, not quite. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But looking at the market really quick as a whole, really interesting activity across the board. SPY closed at all-time highs, 603. Qs within striking distance, but still lagging. And small caps is now also at 3-month highs, which is really interesting that small caps are now picking up a lot of steam on a 3-month time frame compared to Qs. VIX is down super low, 13.5. Bonds up a bit. Bitcoin also capturing highs. It came in MBT. It looks like it hit a high today of what, 10,325, something like that. So overall, super strong performance across the board. So what's going on here? Well, it looks like within the market, there's a bunch of undertones that we can see. And as you look across the different sectors, you can see this coming out in HD. So we're seeing real estate really capturing a lot of trend strength here. It's approaching 3-month highs. It's still lagging a little bit, but not all that long ago, it was literally at 3-month lows. So this is a super strong move that we're seeing in real estate. And then staples and discretionary, that relationship is still kind of interesting to me. We have XLP is still quite a ways off of 3-month highs. XLY is at 3-month highs. So kind of just interesting undertones. From a tech perspective, comm services is still the leader within tech. And you can see XLK is lagging a little bit. So lots to do. As per usual with the market, there's a ton to take a look at. We'll get to GameStop in just, man, that's an ugly candle. But we'll get to GameStop in just a second. Let's take a quick look at NVIDIA first. And NVIDIA's kind of been the talk of the town today and this week for a few different reasons. It had okay earnings. Like, there wasn't anything that stood out to me when it reported earnings that looked super soft, anything like that. It beat EPS. It was expected at 0.7, came in at 0.81. And I know that this is a little lagged, but you can see that the market definitely started reacting off of that. And then we had some other highlights, stuff like this, where it was really starting to take shape as some of Trump policies were being released and discussed. And we're starting to understand and have an understanding of what these different tariff structures might look like. And for a while, there was a lot of concern about some of the tariff conversations Trump was having around China. And he actually came in a little bit softer, I think, than a lot of people expected to start. Now, that doesn't mean that this doesn't ramp up in some sort of really big way, but it does mean that the additional tariff on top of existing tariffs didn't come in as heavy as originally forecasted, because Trump was throwing around some pretty big numbers for stuff like China. So we can see here, this is from Benzinga, and it says stock is up Friday amid reports indicating the U.S. government is set to announce further sanctions on exporting semiconductor equipment and AI memory chips to China, which will be less stringent than the previous ones. So we also have a little bit of easing across the board, specifically any sort of sanctions that existed previously. You can see here, it says U.S. embargo will focus on Chinese companies that make semiconductor manufacturing equipment instead of the fabrication facilities following protests. So the semiconductor sector in general has been under a lot of fire. We also know that there's a big push for domestication of semiconductor production. There's government initiatives and incentives to drive that behavior. But the problem with stuff like that is it takes time. It's not going to be super fast. In order to get a really well-defined and refined system to produce really quality semiconductors, the supply chain component, it takes time to build that. That's why places like Taiwan have such a stranglehold on it, because they've built the infrastructure to get it down to an absolute science. And interestingly enough, even something like semiconductors, there's a lot of passed down knowledge in terms of the production process that isn't necessarily able to just be lifted and shifted super easily. Getting the right experience around to do a good job on chips like that is not simple. So let's check out a little bit here. It says The fresh restrictions will follow months of negotiations between the U.S. government allies, Japan, Netherlands, and American chip equipment makers. The U.S. chip companies, including NVDA and rivals, had previously urged the government to relax its embargo against China, a key semiconductor market. And this just goes back to show how intertwined the different countries. And it's interesting because obviously from a military background, we spend a lot of time wargaming against places like China because they're a massive threat. Meanwhile, we literally struggle to manufacture chips without them, which is a little bit scary if you think about it. So understanding these supply lines is really crucial because there's a lot of really great trade opportunities, specifically in stuff like NVIDIA, that got beaten down pretty hard here. It was at 152 and it fell down into the 130s. That's not a small contraction. And that's a decent correction, I think. And it's something that I really like to the upside long term still. You can see where my downside original target was just for a premature exit if needed. And now this actually gets a chance to move up because I think that long term, it still looks really strong to me. It's just fighting a lot of unknowns, which can provide some opportunities for the enterprising traders. Okay, now over to GameStop. The reason why we got to talk about this is because GameStop had a banger of a week. And I know a lot of people are pretty bummed to see that it wasn't able to hold 30. This doesn't concern me. It really doesn't concern me yet because GameStop has had an insane rally from down here. Remember, just the end of last month, it was in the 20s and now it's in the 30s. And I know, again, for people that are used to playing super volatile stocks that go all over the place, that can double in a month and stuff like that, I understand this might seem less impressive to you, but this is great for me. The reason why it's great for me is because it's good to see the company moving as a normal company. This isn't being overly driven by structural forces. There's a lot going on in here. And you can see this is the same. I haven't redrawn this range. This is the exact range I expected it to trade in for some time. And it's not because they're round numbers of 25 and 30. It's because I use reference ranges on previous places that it transacted heavily. So what I think is going on here is profit taking, and rightfully so. That's what happens is as something starts to appreciate and it starts to look pretty strong, people that got in all the way down here are happy to take their $10+ gain in a few months and then move on to something else. So kind of those weak hands get shaken out a little bit, and then the stronger hands will continue to persist and continue to scoop it up. Now, the big thing for me is, does it consolidate here? And it's TBD. Big red candle today. I don't like that candle today. It's not crazy, but a 6% down move in a day is nothing to scoff at. So I would love to see these moving averages maintain this alignment. You can literally see that we just got full MA alignment, where it's a short term above a slightly shorter or longer term, above a slightly longer term, above the longest term, all positive sloping. That's all good. A lot's going to depend on how Monday looks. That's just how this is going to work, because if it can consolidate in here, that's great news. If this starts a massive retracement, that's less great news. And it is too early to tell from my perspective. As always, in the GameStop community, everybody's interested in being the person that guesses what something is going to do before it happens, which is always a fun game. But for me, it's not the way I approach markets. It's not the way that I trade, because I don't really care what random guesses are. I care about creating probabilistic assumptions to try to trade off of those. So there's lots of people I've seen throwing different kind of numbers around, and you can believe what you want to believe. There's nothing wrong with trying to forecast where things might go, but just always remember, right? Like, price is right. That means whatever price is at the time, even if you don't like it, even if you think it's manipulated, it is what it is. So from a trading perspective, you have to roll with that. From a market structure perspective, that's different. I understand a lot of the concerns people have with some of the pricing issues. And we've been diving into that on the Saturday live streams, where we're going through all of the old DD. We have another live stream tomorrow going through GameStop, and I can definitely see a lot of the concerns that people have, rightfully so. But I'm talking two different lenses. There's the trading lens, which is how do we interface with something to make money as it moves? And then there's the structural lens, which is where obviously we're taking a peek at some of the less upstanding activity going on the back end, which that we don't like to see. So let's take a quick look now at the options chain, because I saw this pop up. Interesting, eh? So we had a few really big transactions today. So if I get rid of this from the week and I just look at today, take a look at the size of these top few trades. This is a $1.8 million trade, and this is a $532,000 trade. Those are big trades. Now, we can see that some of these are still further out in time though, right? So these are out in 2025. So these are people playing longer term price moves. Now, I don't know, and I haven't done the research on those 40s to see where it's likely that they got in at. But my guess is that's at a profit. That's a pretty healthy profit that person just pulled down. And again, rightfully so, because if we can do a little bit more due diligence on this in maybe the live stream tomorrow to see exactly where we think these guys came in and at and what they're doing. But this is looking like a really solid trade, just straight profit taking. But a $1.82 million trade, that's one of the biggest we've seen in some time. This is abnormal. That popped up on a couple of my alerts, and same thing with this 500K trade. And this one also looks to be profit taking. That would be my guess, but it's hard to say because it's closer to the ask, right? So if you look, the spread here is 20 cents. They came in, right dead center. I meant to say it's not closer to the ask. Sorry. It came in dead center. So that really means we don't know where this trade hit in terms of if they're offloading or getting into. My guess would be offloading. And that's just because this is a standard place to take profit taking for positional traders like myself. So I can totally see the angle here. So all eyes on Monday to see if we maintain this kind of range. And I think the range is pretty broadly defined at this point. We have a little bit of leeway to go around, but I'd love to see it hang out in here. And then we do know that earnings is now the 10th confirmed. It moved out. We could obviously see that in the options chain, but they confirmed it this time. So we are coming into earnings soon enough, but we have a little bit more of a standoff distance. If we take a look at what is this one? The 6th of December is at 118% vol. 13 Ds is at 140, and then 20 Ds drops to 128. So there's still pretty heavy vol in the front, definitely around earnings, obviously. And the transactions today were really, really, really call heavy, but take a look. Most of them are calls that are being sold. Standard profit taking. There's nothing here that jumps out that I'm like super concerned, thinking that GameStop's going to crash or anything. It's likely GameStop is going to continue moving around as traders continue to trade. What else would we expect? But it does have super heavy call OI relative to put OI, which you always love to see. And keep an eye out for Monday. If you guys want me to take a look at anything, or if you have any questions, let me know. Be an outlier. I'll see y'all later.